Welcome to Human Risk, a podcast dedicated to the understanding of human behaviour as a risk. Here's your host, Christian Hunt.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Now, what do social media and jazz singing have in common? More than you might think. Now, one of the things I've become increasingly fascinated by is the idea of authenticity. Not in the overused just be yourself or bring your whole self to work, but in the much more practical question of how we show up in the world. And whether that's on social media, at work, on stage, or simply in everyday life. My guest on this episode is Anna Rössler. By day, she's a marketing and LinkedIn specialist, helping senior leaders to communicate more effectively. But she's also a singer, songwriter, and performer. And what I love about Anna is that these aren't two separate lives. She doesn't have a corporate persona that she leaves behind at the weekend, or a personal persona that she leaves behind at the office door or when she's logging on. Instead, she's found a way of bringing all of those different parts of herself together. And in our conversation, we talk about why so much social media feels inauthentic, why personal brands aren't really about branding at all, how AI can help or hinder our ability to communicate, and why finding your own voice matters, whether you're posting on LinkedIn or performing your own songs in front of an audience. More than anything, though, this is a conversation about building a life around the things that give you energy, rather than simply accepting the life you think you're supposed to have. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think you will too. It's my discussion with Anna Rössler on finding your voice. Anna, welcome to the Human Risk Podcast.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
I'm so excited to have you because, look, we've known each other for, I forget how many years, let's not count them. So we know each other pretty well, but tell my listeners who might not have heard of you what you do and about you.
Yeah, so I'm Anna. What am I doing? I'm mostly working in marketing. So for the last 10-ish years, I'm supporting mostly B2B companies to stand out in the marketing world. And I'm specialized on social media and content marketing. So I used to work a lot with companies only and managing their corporate channels. But in the past years, I also worked a lot with senior stakeholders and helping them to build their personal brands on LinkedIn. And that's quite fun. And apart from being a marketing specialist, I also love music. And I'm also a singer and songwriter in my free time.
Wow. Well, we're going to come on and talk about that because one of the things I love about you is you manage to combine all of these things. These don't feel like separate bits of your life, right? All of it is you. But talk a little bit about marketing. How did you get into that?
Well, that's a good question. I always wanted to become a journalist when I was still in school. That was my big dream. I was working for a local newspaper. I had the best time. But at some point I realized it's really, really hard to get a good job in journalism, especially with all the digitalization that happened back then. And I still wanted to write. I still wanted to be creative. So I was thinking about other options that are there. And PR and of course also marketing were fields that felt very close to me, and I started doing internships like you do as a student and somehow stumbled into the whole content marketing and social media sphere and really loved it. And so I got stuck. I started with a software company as my first real job after university, where I was responsible for content marketing and also had my first touch points with LinkedIn, which was very new to me because I just worked with Instagram, Facebook and YouTube before. And since then I continued. So I would say I'm a bit of a LinkedIn geek by now.
Right, all right. And I think one of the things that's interesting is that you've got a lot of people who kind of treat LinkedIn a bit like it's Facebook, and kind of what I think is really interesting about yours is you balance this really well, right? So you've worked out how to make it fun and engaging, but it's still kind of professional. And I'm interested, how do you think about that? Because for some people, right, they struggle with that transition. You know, there are no rules about what you should or shouldn't do, but it's kind of supposed to be a professional network. How did you manage that transition? Because it's a different thing, right?
Yeah, it's a very hard to balance thing. I'm working with a lot of stakeholders, and it always depends on what kind of stories you want to tell. For my personal LinkedIn, I want to entertain people because I know how much boring content is out there, and I try not to be boring. Not saying that every post is the most fun it could be, but I try to balance the different topics that I could share. because I'm sharing a lot of knowledge already in my job, sharing expertise around LinkedIn, how to set up your profile, how to write good posts and stuff. And at some point I realized, yes, of course I'm doing these trainings, but why not use little nuggets of what I'm already sharing in these bigger trainings to also send it out to LinkedIn? Because I always get these questions, oh, how do I write a good post? What is a good hook? Do I need a link? Can I put the link in the post? Or where do I put it? And all these little things are questions that are coming up. And I realized, although it seems very natural to me, it's new to a lot of people. And I think what makes a good personal brand is, of course, the knowledge, the expertise that you're having, but you always have to sprinkle in a bit about yourself, because that's what makes the difference. Your perspective and also the little side information that you could share about yourself, not saying that you need to show your family on LinkedIn, but if you have a cool hobby, why not talk about it as well? Because that's you and that's what makes you special and stand out.
And there's something really interesting about, because you would think logically that the organizations and companies would have much more kind of powerful channels and ability to communicate. But actually what we're seeing increasingly is it's individuals that have that power. And so I guess one of the challenges for what you do is, on the one hand, you've got to be the corporate voice. On the other hand, you want to encourage all the people within the organization to promote themselves. And there's this weird kind of tension, I've always thought, between, historically, you would want everybody to be under the company, right? The company's the most important thing. And nowadays, what we're recognizing much more is that you actually need your people to be pushing their own personal brands, helps their employer. And so I think there's something really interesting in that you're balancing both of those things, because in order for you to be effective at your job, I guess you have to promote the organization, but you also want to set an example for all the people to promote their personal brands. And so you've kind of got these two different things. Do you find it easy to switch between those two voices, I guess?
I think yes, but I don't think so much about it. I just do it. What I realize is that I cannot tell managing directors, for example, that they need to be more active on LinkedIn, and then I'm not active because I say, oh, I don't have time, I don't have ideas. So I also need to be a good role model, and that's why I initially started to post more regularly, to also find out for myself what is good content, how does it perform, what works for me, to also then translate that for other people and help them with their content. Of course, and that's the speciality about LinkedIn, whatever you do there will be connected to where you work. And that's also a bit of a challenge, because of course you have your own opinions, and ideally you are very well connected to your employer and you love what they're doing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with everything that they are doing. And I think that's a bit of this balancing act. And of course, corporate messages, they are important and they need to be there, because every one of us is helping the company to spread the news, to spread what the company is doing, what services they are offering, what knowledge they have. But still, it's this mix of different topics that makes it interesting in the end. And you can talk about business topics without making it super boring and being like a press release.
Right, because there are loads of people that produce what I call hostage videos, right? So they're sitting there and they kind of just repeat whatever the company said, they just repeat it. And the bit I find really interesting is we can tell, right? You can smell that. And I've kind of always wondered, like, why do people do that? And I think they do it because it's safe, right? Because I don't have to think, right? I just literally repeat what's there, and then I'm not going to get into trouble, and it must be okay. But that doesn't help you build a personal brand. And so I think there's something interesting, and I love the way you talked about experimenting, because like we kind of have an idea of what works, but until you try it, you don't know. And I think that feels, for some people, that feels quite risky.
Absolutely. A lot of people are very scared of it's getting on stage. And you have also a lot of critiques. And usually the critiques are not outside of the company, but they are inside. There are these little people you meet on the coffee bar telling you, oh, I saw your post. Do you also work? Or something like that. Right. It happens. Or they ask you about, okay, I wouldn't post something like that. And you get these kind of comments. And if you're not very safe about yourself, then this might also lead to questions, and you might stop doing things that you liked before. And I think that's something that we always have to keep in mind. with what we're doing on social media, we are reaching much more people than we would usually reach on a normal day, even if it's not super viral and extremely well performing. And yeah, in the end, that's just something that people have to deal with. And I think as long as you don't take a risk and try something new, you will not know how it performs. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to also try out things and see like it's not working.
Right.
But you need to do that in order to find it out.
But that point about the audience you're reaching is super interesting, because I think sometimes it's easy to forget that the internal audience exists, right? You're thinking about, I'm putting this out there to my network, and forget that the people sitting in the office next door will also see it. And I sometimes think LinkedIn is, in a way, can be more effective than internal channels, right? So I've talked to compliance people who, like, the way they speak to their business, because they know that people don't read compliance emails internally. How do they speak to their business, right? They put stuff on LinkedIn that yes, it's public, but it's targeting an internal audience. And I think that's kind of interesting. But yeah, you're right. If you put stuff out there, and it could go anywhere. And I think it struck me that I was looking at something that I thought had underperformed. I think it was like 300 impressions or something. And I was like, that's terrible. And then I was like, well, hold on a minute. Almost 300 people will have seen this thing. I can't reach 300 people by any other, if I send an email, they're not going to read it. So that's kind of cool. It might not be the people I want to reach, but there's something interesting. I don't think we're not set up to understand this stuff.
Yeah, and what I see often, and I also experienced it myself, I always get the question, hey, what is a well-performing post? I just sent that out and has barely no impression. It barely has any engagement. But what I also had these cases for myself. I posted, I looked at the statistics, I was like, well, that wasn't that great. But then I kept meeting people outside. They were like, I saw your post, it was really interesting, but they're just lazy. People on LinkedIn and all social media platforms are just lazy. It takes a big step to leave a like. It takes an even bigger step to leave a comment or even reshare things. And that's also something we forget. People just consume. And they will see it, they will read it, they might even save it for them to use it later, but they might not necessarily tell you that they saw it.
Yeah, and it's weird, because I've had this a few times where people have sort of spoken to me and you kind of think you're just making this up. And then they talk to you in a level of detail that means they must have seen it. And I'm like, why are you not engaging? And I think there's something interesting about, I guess sometimes, I think laziness is true, but sometimes it's also they're scared. Right, I don't want to like that thing because somebody might see that I've liked it and that might be problem. So it's kind of like it's the same risk about posting, the risk of responding. And I don't know how we get out of that thing. I guess the only way we get out of it is for more people to use it so that they then recognize the benefits of responding to other people's stuff.
Yeah, I think it's what I always find very fascinating about social media is it has social in the term. But for whatever reason, as soon as people enter the internet, they forget everything they would do in normal life. Right. So of course, if I go into, let's say that's one of my favorite examples. I go to a party, I wouldn't enter the room saying, hey, I'm great, I did this fantastic project, and then leave again. But people do that on the internet.
Right.
So instead of doing that, if you get replies and comments, why not reply to them? That's something I also see a lot. People reply to your post and you don't respond to it. Why?
Yeah, it is
of course, there are these AI-generated comments. Of course, there are these things that's like, okay, what should I say now? But still appreciate if people are willing to spend 3 seconds of their time with your content.
But I think you've kind of captured something interesting there, because it is on the one hand, the word social suggests that it's very human, right? And so we should be, because we are social creatures, we should be used to this kind of communication. But actually, there's something about the dynamics. I guess the number of people you're speaking to, the way it works, the fact that feedback doesn't immediately come, and there's a whole mystique and a whole load of gurus that will tell you how to do this and that. So there's a whole load of sort of noise around it. But ultimately, you're right, it is a very human thing, but it's kind of not for some reason. I love your party example, because it's sort of like, you're right, you wouldn't walk into a room and just start shouting and showing off and then walk out again, right? It would be weird. But people do that online. And so I think this is I guess we're evolving to work out what it is. And sometimes I think it's incredibly natural, it should be easy. And then sometimes I go, it is a bit weird. And so I guess what you're doing is playing with those dynamics and trying to sort of shape things. And it must be interesting because the algorithms keep changing and what people use it for is changing. And so I guess your job must be fascinating, because I look at it from a personal perspective and think, like every time I think I've cracked it, something changes. And there are so many variables, like when you post, what you hashtags or whatever, right? Whether you use video, whether you use pictures. And so it must be quite interesting for you because it's not you're not trying to master something that's constant, right? It's not cooking, for example. The dynamics don't change.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas this, I think,
if you didn't have a new oven,
right?
They
okay.
might. They might.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one thing you learn as a social media manager is, of course, we have to look at algorithm changes. We have to look at how platforms evolve, but we still need to just stay true to what we are doing because due to all of these changes, you cannot foresee them. And of course, you can try to please what currently works, and that's a great thing, and following trends and following new formats. But it's not like a secret weapon, and only because you will do this doesn't mean that you will go viral and that every post will perform well. So I think it's more important to build up a network that is interested in your content and to share contents that are interesting for them, because this, no matter what the algorithm is doing, will make sure that people come back and look at what you have to tell. And of course, at the moment, I think the LinkedIn algorithm is really testing our nerves.
Right. No, but it's sort of weird because I agree. It's part of me just sort of thinks, you know, we're not to keep on top of it because this is the distribution channel, right? So you understand where it goes and how it works is important. But on the other hand, if you keep chasing that thing, then it becomes exhausting. And I always think if you succeed, and I think this is an interesting thing for life, right? If you succeed following a plan someone else has told you, then that might work. But if something changes, you don't know what you're doing because you're just following someone else's plan. And if you fail, I kind of think that feels a bit stupid because you followed someone else's plan and you still haven't succeeded, right? I'd rather fail being me, right, and learn from it. And then if you succeed, you at least know why you've succeeded and you can keep doing it. And there is this weird sort of thing about what it does to people and how they you know, back to you saying they do unnatural things. I think there's this really interesting thing about sort of gurus and people, self-appointed experts, right, who think they've cracked it. But people kind of, on some level, people believe this stuff. And so I guess, do you switch off from all that thing? Are you reading all these things, or are you just like focusing on from your perspective?
No, I'm reading a lot. I'm also following some of these gurus, and I think some of them are also partially right, at least. So there's, for example, this Richard van der Ploem guy who is also doing a lot of research around LinkedIn. Of course, you can always take it with a grain of salt, whatever anybody is sharing, because of course, at the end, everyone wants to earn money. But I still think that it's important to see what is discussed out there and also to critically question yourself. Is this what I'm also seeing? Or do I observe something else? And it's okay to have these tips, and they might also work for certain people, but they might not work for everyone. But just having also, because you get a lot of questions, and it's also good to have some numbers at hand. Let's be honest. Having some statistics can help to convince people. And I just try to make use of different formats, to try different things, try different hooks. And I think there is one pattern that is always there. As soon as you show your face, you usually get much more likes than just showing information content like infographics or sliders. But also here, I see perfect examples for sliders because they can contain a lot of information, and people like to save those kind of things because they want to look at it later. And yeah, it's good. Take a look outside what is there, but make your own opinion. I think that's like with everything. That's the most important thing.
And how do you measure success, right? Because there's one of the things I find fascinating is there's all these different metrics, right? So you could talk about reach, you could talk about likes, you could talk about impressions, you could talk about whatever. But to the point you made earlier, there are people not responding and not engaging, and so they're hidden sometimes from the realities of what. How do you think about success from a social media perspective? What does that look like?
Well, of course, we have impressions, we have engagements, and it's fair to have them. It's important. In the end, you need to define for yourself what is the goal, and there you can also have different goals at the same time. What I would always prioritize for social media is the goal of building connections and building a network and getting in exchange with people, because this in the end really brings benefit, because you might need a new job at some point, you might need clients, you just want to have new friends. That's also an opportunity. So I think that's something everyone should put on the top list, because that's, again, here it's the social part of social media. From a business perspective, of course, I find very interesting what kind of engagement/conversion you can bring. So especially clicks to websites, signups for a webinar, reach outs for a demo. Of course, this is from a business perspective, that's what we want in the end, because of course every company wants to make money, and building up your sales funnel is super important. Let's say it like it is. And of course, also looking at like impressions, that's nice, but also with all the changes that we've seen with the algorithm, and also that's not something that is just special to LinkedIn, but also to any other social media platform that we have. At the beginning, it's very easy to reach a huge amount of people, but as they start monetizing their content, and of course also LinkedIn or social media platforms like Instagram, they want to earn money. So of course, they somehow limit how many people can see your content so that you spend your money on ads.
Right.
So I think it's nice, and it's a good ego number if you know, oh, I reached 100,000 people. Of course, it's a nice thing, but I would rather look at the engagement you're getting. Likes is good. It's a very easy and low effort thing to do, but even more interesting from my point of view, comments, because here again you get the social connect. You have the chance to really discuss with people about your content and get the direct feedback on what you're sharing. Is somebody sending you a direct message? Same thing. If somebody is sharing your content, that's also great, because it means it's that valuable that people think their network should also see it. Right. And also this new hidden engagement or interaction of saving posts. I think that's also, I find it always interesting, because I sometimes look at post statistics and there are not a lot of comments, shares and likes. But if I then look at the saves, it's a huge number. So people really want to look at it again. And I think that's one metric that a lot of people are not looking at yet.
And you talked a little bit about, when we think about personal content, you talked about bringing yourself into it. What's the sort of process about thinking about, and this will be a nice way to talk about some of the other things that you do, but you bring, you talked about your singing, you bring that in. And what I love about what you do is you do it in a kind of effortless way, right? Because there's some people that will sort of do, here's something that happened to me, what lessons I can learn, right? And it's like there's no link whatsoever, right? Just because your kids had a meltdown in the supermarket, right, doesn't mean that there's a great business lesson from that. But you do it in a really way that's authentic, and I just wondered about that. Like, does that come naturally to you because you've been doing it for ages? Do you have to think carefully about it? Because for you, it flows in a way that doesn't feel artificial.
Well, of course, I'm brainstorming ideas. It's not that I don't have my lists of things I could talk about, but I just try to stay open-minded. What is happening to me? And it doesn't need to only to be like social media content, but sometimes I see marketing materials that I find kind of funny. But and music is such a big part of my life, and everybody who knows me also on a private level knows that I'm constantly at either rehearsals or concerts or attending concerts myself. And it feels wrong not to talk about it, because it's just such an important part. So I just try to balance sharing more business-related content with these. But it's also, on the other hand side, it's also a bit of a business for me, because in best case, I get paid gigs.
Right.
So of course, it's also a bit sharing my other business with people, but it's also my biggest passion. So I just try to balance things out. And if I have a nice story to talk about, I just share it. And if it resonates with people, great. If it doesn't, well, I'm not losing anything.
Right. Well, and I think there's something interesting there about that idea of, if you put stuff out there, it doesn't work. Like, if you post once and it fails, That's 100% of your stuff has failed, right? And there's an interesting question as to what failure means, right? Because it might have succeeded, but you can't see it. But I always think if you put 100 posts out, right, and one of them fails, then that's 1% of your output. And so it kind of doesn't matter as much because it's a sort of venture capital approach to content. And so I've been thinking much more about experimentation and playing with things. So I have a dream, which is I want a post that will get no responses whatsoever, right? Get a very small number of impressions, right? And not because I'm deliberately looking for it, but because I want to see what is it that I think is super interesting that nobody else thinks is interesting, right? That gets nothing. And I've been looking for this thing and I can't do it. Like I just can't find it. And I find that really, really interesting because, I mean, I'm sure I could do it, put something really boring, put it out at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm sure I could get nothing, right? But sort of playing that, which kind of suggests to me that kind of whatever you put out there, as long as it's authentic, there will be an audience for it on some level. Yeah. And I think that's quite a refreshing, it's back to the you don't know where it's going. And it may find people that you wouldn't expect. Right? Yeah. So I guess what you're doing is being very confident about who you are and just kind of going, this is me and I'm going to put it out there. And I guess there's a little bit of, I don't care whether people like this, right? Is that true? I mean, I don't mean like screw the rest of you, but like it doesn't matter because your start point is I think this is interesting. I'm going to put it out there.
Yeah, I would agree that I'm quite confident about who I am and what stories I can tell. Of course, I wouldn't say that I'm not also looking at my numbers and that I'm not just hoping that people will like it. That would be a lie if I'd say that. But I know how social media works, and I know that you just need to go out there and start at some point. And it will be hard at the beginning, and it will be also hard in between because you might have your editorial plan and stick to it, but at some point you are on the holidays or you just are stressed at work and have other things to do, and you will not find the time or the capacity to do it, and then you have this little crack in your content plan. But yeah, I just think it's good to try.
And do you ever like run out of ideas? Because one of the things I find is it's sort of there's the thing in writing where you get writer's block, right? I can't write, and I sometimes find I'm like, oh my, I've got nothing, which is not true, right? But it's kind of like I can't be like the stuff I have. I don't know, for some reason it doesn't pass the test for me on that day, and so there are days when I sit there and go, I can't do anything. Does that happen to you? Or
of course, I would say for myself, it's okay because I know that there is still a big backlog of ideas. Mm-hmm. I think the problem is more translating them into content because I know some of them they need a good picture or they need a good slider, and this will take time to set it up, or I just don't have the creativity to create the content right now in the way that I want to put it out. I think that's more of a problem, but it can happen with people that I work with because I support a lot of people also in coming up with ideas for them. And sometimes, and these moments go away, that's a good thing. They always vanish at some point. But there could be this 1 month where it's like, oh my God, what kind of story do we tell? It feels like everything has been said already. Right. Every aspect of life has been already put the highlight on. But what I always find important is to talk with people. Either if it's for your own content, talk with your friends, talk with your colleagues, because they will point out things that you didn't see yet that can bring inspiration. And if you're a social media manager and working with other senior stakeholders, for example, in your company, then also talk to them because you might find out, oh, they have a hobby I haven't heard about yet. Or they are attending an event that was not on your radar yet, and just playing around with ideas, asking people, what would you think about that? Do you think that would be a fit? Is a good start, and this gets your creative juices flowing again.
But I guess that's interesting because traditionally, if I think about sort of like, it would be kind of, if I think about it from a sort of PR perspective, you'd have the PR person kind of going and almost ghostwriting it for the people. And I think nowadays, again, we can tell when that's happened, right? So you can have, well, the chief exec must be on LinkedIn and they must write things. You can kind of tell when it's inauthentic. I mean, I'm sure there's some really, really good kind of ghost writers that do this stuff. But what you were talking about there is your job isn't to kind of go, oh, let me write some content for that person. It's like, I need them to write this stuff. So you're kind of acting as a creative advisor, right? Which is you're trying to pull things out of them. Which is sort of interesting because traditionally the specialism would have been, I will advise you on what will work well, and I'll tell you what to say and write. I'll give you the lines to take. But what you've just talked about there is kind of like trying to get them to come up with stuff. So so almost you're going around and getting people to pull the stories out themselves, right? So you're trying to inspire them a bit, I guess.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's also a bit where my passion for journalism comes from. You ask questions to people to get their answers in the end. And authenticity, this is a buzzword we are using for years now, but also with AI coming into play, it's even more important. And of course, all of us are using AI to create content. I think there are just a few people who never used it, and it's a great help. But in the end, you need to make sure that it sounds like you. And that's also something we are currently seeing a lot, that people are just copy-pasting from what they got from ChatGPT, what they got from Claude or any other platform. And you can tell. And I would recommend to just read it out loud. And then you will see very easily if this is a sentence you would use yourself, or if it's just some sentence that the AI came up with.
Yeah, and I guess, but that's back to, whether people are told to do this or they feel they need to do it. It's like, I need to get some content out. I'm told this is an important thing to do, or I feel like I want to do it. How do I do that quickly? Well, here you go. Here's a digital tool that will give me solve the problem. And it solves the problem in terms of you've put something out, but it doesn't. In fact, it's not even doesn't solve the problem. It probably makes things worse, right? Because people can sense it. To your point is, you sort of read it and go, yeah, you didn't write that.
Yeah.
And so almost I would say, if you do that kind of copy paste thing, actually you're kind of ticking if you're just interested in saying I posted 500 times this month or whatever, right, then that solves the problem. But actually it irritates the hell out of your audience, right, or you won't get an audience, and people kind of go, I'm not going to read this, right, because it's obviously it's not them. And so it's kind of like it passes the test, but it completely fails the test. And I think that's a really interesting thing, is like it's not like do my tax return or something, right, where it's a computation and that actually it could do it. It's you're outsourcing part of you to the machine, and the machines aren't good enough for that yet.
I think maybe the machines are, but the prompting isn't.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay, yeah.
It's very interesting time, and I love working with AI because it really helps, and especially if you have to produce a lot of content in a short amount of time, it's really a time saver and a lifesaver. And it also, what people also forget is that you can set up like custom GPTs or projects or skills, as you would like to call it in Claude, that you nurture with how you would talk, with previous postings, with articles you have published. And with the time and the right prompt, it will learn a bit more to talk how you would talk yourself. And if you then share good content and a good prompt with it, the result can be pretty close to what you would write yourself. So that's fine, but you need to do these steps in order to get there, because otherwise it's just generic, oh, I'm glad to hear that, blah, blah, blah. And I had this conversation with a student recently, and because I was creating a post and I used emojis, and they were like, yeah, but emoji is so ChatGPT. I was like, yeah, but we also used emojis before ChatGPT existed, so it had to learn that from somewhere, what is a good post. And I understand there are a couple of these phrases that you see everywhere where it's like, of course, that was written by ChatGPT, or a certain way of how emojis are used. The little rocket, of course, if they used a rocket, it was written by ChatGPT, apart from working for an airspace company, of course. But yeah, I think you still need to find your own language, also visually. How does your post look like? How many paragraphs do you have? Do you use bullet lists? Is it long? Is it short? Do you have both? What's the image like?
Right.
Yeah.
You're clearly passionate about this. The passion, I sense, comes from like a sense of curiosity and adventure. And so I wondered, does that just come naturally to you, or do you have to maintain that? How does that work? Because the enthusiasm with which you talk about this stuff, right? And the enthusiasm in your social media content, it's kind of infectious, because it's just sort of, there's this energy there, right? And it's really hard to describe, but it's kind of there. And it's even like if there's no, just in the words that you use and the way it's very, and I wonder, does that just come naturally to you?
Probably yes. For me, what brings me joy is working with people and getting the impression that I make their lives a bit easier. And this can be by sharing knowledge and doing my trainings and finding out what they would need to hear in order for them to be more secure, to be more confident, to try new things. That's something I really love. But it's also when I look at my music topic, that's the same. I play a song, and if I can see that people enjoy it, or they approach me and say, hey, I really liked your lyrics, that's fantastic, because in the end, that's again this connection that I can create with people, and I like to share good energy with other people. And I'm not so much into all of these esoteric energies and blah blah stuff, but it still is. If you bring a good mood to the room, this will show off and it will pay off in the end. But if you get there very grumpy and not willing to interact, of course, that's also what you get back.
Right. And you've talked about the music. Tell us a little bit about it. What kind of music do you perform?
So different kinds. I'm very much into jazz and soul music, but I also love pop music. I'm a big fan of 90s and early 2000s pop. I used to be a big Britney Spears fan when I was a child, so this heritage is still in me. But yeah, I try to mix things. I get easily bored. I could not just do jazz all of my life, but I love to take a pop song and create a jazzy version of it, or to get a jazz standard and make a funky version out of it. That's something where I really strive and where I'm happy with the results in the end. And I always sang. I think since I can think, I was singing. I'm coming from a very musical family. I started learning the flute, like every German child in school. I continued with learning how to play the piano. And later, before I finished school, I also started with singing lessons because I wanted to explore this a bit more. I always sang in choirs, but I wanted to try out how it is to be a solo singer. And luckily, at university, I found my first band. We mostly played pop covers, but also tried to write our first songs back then. And I think in the last 3 to 4 years, I really tried to level up how I make music and also write a lot more of my own music, which is challenging, but also fun. And it's really interesting to see how people react to something you create on your own, because it's easy to play a cover of a Michael Jackson song and everybody knows it, and it's cool because you get good feedback because people love it and they might like the version that you put out. But going on a stage and singing a song that nobody in the room knows about a topic that might be very, very close to yourself is something interesting.
So there's a sense there of kind of keeping like the buzz you get from the crowd, the energy that comes back. But there's also like a willingness to put yourself out there. And there's interesting parallels with what we were just talking about, right? Which fascinates me. But are you somebody that you love performing on stage, right? That's sort of the energy you get from it. Do you ever get stage fright at all? There's a balancing act here, right?
I wouldn't call it fright. I'm a bit nervous. It depends a bit on the gig. There are gigs where I just can go there and it just works. And there are other gigs where I feel much more nervous. I wouldn't say that I'm very scared because I enjoy it and I know that I enjoy it. But it's it's usually the setup that I'm in. I hate to wait for gigs. It's very horrible for me if it's the gig is supposed to start at 9 and then it's starting at 9:30 and I have these 30 minutes where I'm like, I'm ready. Can I please go on stage? And I'm not allowed to yet. This is really horrible for me. And of course it makes a big difference whether I'm playing by myself, just me and my ukulele, or recently I also tried to play the piano from time to time and I'm not very good at playing the piano. So this really stresses me out because I don't want to make mistakes.
Right.
But playing with a band, for example, I feel much more safe because I have other people I know that we play well together. Yeah.
And you wrote, and this fascinates me because it's sort of someone that uses their voice for their work quite a bit. You talked about the things you do to get your voice prepared, which I thought was fascinating, and we've traded tips about which particular like things, sweets and things to try to sort of vocal cords out. So the fact that you have that sort of conversation means you've taken this to a level, right, where you want everything. I guess is it that you want to be super professional about it, or is it just or it could be both, right? Or that you want the environment to work for you, and you know what works, and you've got patterns and routines that help you.
So of course, I want to offer professional experience for people because it should be enjoyable. But I also I use my voice a lot. I use it, of course, for singing, but I also use it when I'm talking a lot, when I'm holding speeches or trainings. And I know that voices are very, very fragile. They're beautiful. Some people also have vocal cords made of iron, and I'm very jealous of those kind of people, but mine are not. And I'm taking singing lessons now for the last couple of years again, which really helped me to understand better what is good for my voice, what isn't, to also control how I use it, how I warm it up, how I cool it down. And yeah, I think it's important. It's like a muscle, and that's also something we forget that the voice is like a muscle. You have to train it, but you also have to maintain it. And if you do sports every day, that's also not good. Or if you go on to the training, if you're sick, that's also nothing that you should do. And the same applies to a voice. And there are so many influences that could make it a bit more fragile, like having allergies, or for women also being on period can change, or like your hormone cycle can really change how your voice works. So yeah, just knowing that and incorporating it is very important for me. Doesn't mean that I'm not also going to parties and I'm singing far too loud because I just love the song, and then I get home, it's like, oh my God, my poor voice. But knowing what I could do to prevent that is important.
But that's kind of consistent with it's not, you're doing this because you're passionate about it, right? It's part of who you are. And so I always find it weird with, I get that if you want to be the top performer, you have to sort of dedicate yourself to something. But I kind of think there's a point where you lose that passion for it. If it becomes too much of like I've got to follow this regime. I've always thought this about professional sports people, footballers, for example. You love playing football, but at some point you've got to subject yourself to routines that make this remove a little bit of that human element. And my sense is when you talk about this stuff, is this kind of, you recognize the technical stuff and you know there's a discipline to it. But it's also like, I have to be me and I have to be human. Yeah.
And yeah, I think with voices in particular, there are so many different voices, and that's the beauty. And not everyone will like how I sing, and that's completely fine, because I also don't like how some singers out there are performing, but I can still appreciate what they're doing, what kind of art they're producing, and maybe how good of a technique they have. That's fine. But yeah, it's.
But it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because it comes back to the sort of content thing. Like if you produce something that everybody likes, it kind of has to be sort of average, right? It's not going to be interesting or exciting or different. It's kind of going to sit in that. The kind of like every song that tops the charts is not necessarily interesting, right? There's some really just like generalist stuff that will appeal to a large number of people. And so I love this idea of kind of thinking about it and just going, I just want to be, which comes back to being confident in yourself, right? Knowing who you are. And just kind of like, this is what I do, right? And I'm going to do this in the way that I want to do it.
Yeah. Well, I think getting older also helps there. And of course, being younger, you think about much more about what others might think. I think for myself, it helps that I always had a very broad interest in music in different genres. And even as a very young teenager, I listened to French chansons, to music from the 20s to the 40s, which was not popular among my friends. But I still loved it because I kind of had this connection. My mother showed me some songs and I just loved it, and now I can use this knowledge about music to also create my own. And of course, I could write a lot of these classic pop songs that just sound nice, which is fine. I think if you're a songwriter and you're earning your money with that, and you just want to write hits, cool. But for me, it's a passion, and it's a side hustle to some sort. So I want to do something that brings me joy, and I want to experiment. And I might also see that one of the songs is not well perceived by people, but it's still my work, and I put my thoughts and my creativity in it.
And you said it's a side hustle. Have you ever thought about becoming the main hustle?
I have thought about it millions of times, but I'm a bit... So on the one hand side, again, voice very fragile. I'm not sure if I could sing a concert every night a week.
Right.
Also, I'm super proud. I have a lot of friends who are full-time musicians, and it's a beautiful thing, but you really need the drive to want to be an artist full-time. I think we saw it through the pandemics, how easily you can lose all the money that you made and all of the opportunities to make money. And arts, I think in general, is not the easiest field.
Right.
And I'm not so much of a risk taker, to be honest. And last but not least, for me, I think the beauty is connecting the different passions I have, because I love my job. It's not that I'm doing my job because I have to pay my rent, but I love to work in marketing and help others to succeed in it. But I also love music, so ideally I can, here again, I think balance is my topic. Balance it out. And I would love to spend a bit more time on music, because of course if you play gigs and also if you want to produce music, it takes time, and if you don't put more time in it, you will not get more gigs. So it's a bit like this vicious circle of not moving anywhere if you don't put more time in it. But for the moment, I'm happy for what I have and what I can try out.
I love that. And the bit I find interesting is if you thought about music or art as a business proposition, and ignore the passion that came, you'd be going, it's insane, right? Why would you do this thing that has a very small chance of success, right? Where you're constantly at risk, where there's all sorts of things that can disrupt your business and that are out of your control. And so you would go, nobody in their right mind would do that. And so I've got huge amounts of respect for people that carry that on. On the other hand, I just go, that is just like the stress around that. And so what I think is interesting about your balancing bit here is you've kind of found a way to, you still get to do all those things, but you don't have to sit there and worry about the revenue side of it. So it's almost like you can perform for fun and not have to think about how much money am I making from those things. And I love the bit you just said there about, and this is why I really wanted to get you on the show, because I think there's something beautiful about the way you've balanced these things out, which is you have a job that you love and you know, side hustle the rest of your life. So this is kind of like beautifully fused together in that you're not going, oh, I've got to go to work, this is all tedious, right? And then you go through the day, and then thank God I can now have fun, right? You've balanced these two things out, and I'm fascinated how you did that, because that's not common, right? There's loads of people out there that will recognize this thing where they go, either I love my job and the rest of my life sucks somehow, right? Or it's kind of like I hate my job and the rest of my life is amazing, and the balance is wrong, but you've managed to get that right. And I'm fascinated. Did that just happen, or have you thought consciously about this, or?
I think it was some sort of learning that I had, because at some point in my life I was just working. And I liked my job, but I also could see that it's taking away a lot of my energy. It was very draining, despite liking it, despite being in a great team. For me, I think it was like a learning path. At some point when I started my first job, I moved to a new city. I moved to Munich, away from the city where I studied, where I had my band, and I had no music network. So the only thing I could do was sitting at home with my ukulele on the couch, singing songs. Fine, I love that, it's great. But I had to prioritize a bit how my life goes. I needed to get into this corporate life, I learned how my job works. But I also came to the point where I felt like, oh, I feel very exhausted with work, but I don't have this thing that brings me joy. So the scenario that you just described. And I was really unhappy for a while, and I thought, I need to change something, because I don't want to be this person that is unhappy. Although I like my team, I like my job, but there's something missing. So I decided music is what I love so much, so I need to get back into that. I started I think it was shortly after the pandemics or like the first big waves ended. So I started taking singing lessons again because I just wanted to do something with my voice again. And I luckily have a fantastic singing teacher, and she really encouraged me from like the very beginning to say like, hey, you need a band again, and you need to play with other musicians, because I can see that this is something you enjoy and you need to do that. So she gave me a couple of recommendations where I could look out for workshops, or open stages, something like that. And this was like my initial start. I still remember that very day I went to, there is this one cafe next to the Literaturhaus here in Munich. They have a jazz brunch every weekend. And I went there by myself because I just wanted to listen to music and nobody else had time. So I decided, hey, you know what? I just go there on my own.
Right.
And I sat there, listened to jazz, and I thought, okay, I need to do one of these workshops that she recommended. So I was just looking it up. I signed up while sitting there drinking my coffee. And I was very lucky because usually this course that I found out about is usually filled up because they used to have a very, like the same group of musicians that is always attending it, but the singer just left. So there was an open spot and I was at the right place at the right time to get the slot. And since then I'm part of this group. So also now other singer can come in now. Sorry guys. But this was one of the, that really moved things for me because I finally had a band again, even if it's like a paid workshop. But I learned so much. And from there, I went to open stages. I met new musicians. I always made sure to network. I met new friends that I'm now making music with. And from all these little pieces, my music network now exists. If I plan a gig, I can think about whether I'm playing alone or if I need a band, and then I reach out to the people that I think fit best. If I want to play pop, I ask certain people. If I need a jazz combo, I ask other ones. And it's so fascinating how life can change in such a short amount of time, only because you start somewhere and make things. And now for me, I work a lot. I love my job. But I still have music always as something that I do on the side. And I know, and that's also something that I can just recommend, have appointments in your calendar. Like Monday evenings, I go to my rehearsal and it's good because then I don't work. I just go to my rehearsal and I love it and it's good. It brings me joy. It brings me new energy, new ideas. And I think this balance and seeing how beneficial it is for me as what drives me.
What really intrigues me is that, because this is all intrinsically motivated by you, what you want to do, right? You haven't kind of gone, let me go find a hobby that sounds cool, right? Because you get people that go, I need to do something that's, so they go and do, and some of this is midlife crisis, but some of it's like, I'm going to go and do something that sounds really cool so I have a really cool story to tell, right? But who don't really enjoy it, but they're doing it because you've just kind of gone, I need to have this thing, this is important to me, I'm going to build this. And the way you talked about, well, I have these people for this, and this, is you've kind of designed the world around you, right? And so if I look at the structures you use, the way you think about it, you're in control. And you've kind of set the terms of how this works, which means that you want to do it because you've got no excuse, right? Because the environment is designed. And I think there's something wonderful about people that can sort of recognize what works for them. And then you just kind of go, particularly with something that involves other people, we have choices out there, right? Who we hang out with and who we don't. Like if there's certain people that don't work for you, you don't have to be friends with those people, right? And there's other people for them. And so I love this idea that you've kind of worked out, you've got a system in place that's designed around you. And that might not work for another musician and probably won't, right? Because it's for you, it's specifically to you. And I think there's something interesting about it. You then combine that with a job that you clearly love doing that works for you. And the bit that fascinates me about both of these things is that you take the music and the music becomes part of the marketing thing. So you talk about your music as part of the natural thing. So if anybody looked at it, they would know that both of these things are what you do, right? You don't have to hide one thing. Kind of there's a secret thing I do at weekends that I don't talk about. It's all part of the same thing. And so there's this ecosystem that you've developed that I think is really interesting because it just works for you because it's yours and you've designed it. And you've done that without kind of going, I'm going to fight the system. It's like you've made the system work for you. And I think that's super interesting. Because there's lots of people out there that struggle with that, right? That don't have the confidence, or maybe they haven't found that thing, or they don't know where to look for it, or I don't know. Like it's I'm not allowed to do that, and you've just kind of gone, screw this, I'm going to do it. See, my approach to that would be to be a bit rebellious and just go, screw, I'm going to do it my way, right? Like Frank Sinatra logic, right? But you've just kind of made it happen. And I'm really intrigued by that, because I think it's a really powerful message for people who sort of feel constrained by, maybe they're in a career that doesn't work for them, or they're kind of like, they're doing things because they feel they ought to do them, right? I need to be seen to be, but there's none of that with you, right? Every single thing is like, this is you, who you are, you love it, it's part of it, and it all kind of feeds. I just think that's super interesting.
I just realized for myself, and this now sounds like this is a book smart, whatever, but nobody will do things for you if you don't do them yourself. And that's, of course, and it's not all fun and games. I'm also sometimes struggling. It's not that every work day is my most favorite work day. It's also not that every gig works out fine, or that it's always easy to balance work and also concert life. But I just decided that if I want to do things and if I want to try out things, I need to do them, because nobody else can do it for me.
Right, and I think there's an interesting thing there about lots of people. You look at society and you kind of go, I want this, or I expect this to happen, right? And I'm going to sit here and then I'll just hope that the universe brings all these things together. And I think you're absolutely right. It's kind of like put it simply, shit only happens if we make it happen, right? And sometimes it's actually really easy to make things happen. You just have to connect, back to the network thing, you connect with the right people and you ask the right questions and you kind of hustle a little bit. And sometimes it's really hard because it's not the official way of doing things, but you break that down. But I don't know, there's just something about, you remind me of this. There's the analogy of the swan, right, where it glides effortlessly on top, and then underneath it's going crazy, but you can't see the going crazy. And it just seems to me that you've cracked that a little bit, and I think that's really interesting. Is that how it feels a bit, right? There's lots of good stuff going on.
Fake it until you make it.
Right? Yeah. But that's easy to say. Yeah. But it's just, there's something interesting there. And this, of course, right, this is me just creating logic here. But I wonder whether there's something about the marketing thing is helps you in the presentation of it, right? And to be effortless and be yourself, because you know that that's what's powerful there. But there's also the dedication and the passion on the other. So it does nicely blend together, right? It sits there as a sort of, it's not, I guess everything you've got there all points in the same direction, right? This isn't, you're not having to, you're not having to struggle with two different competing propositions, right? It's all part of who you are. And I guess anybody that hires you knows this. This is the other bit I love about to loop the two things together. If you talk about what you do on social media, right, not every detail, it becomes part of who you are. And so when people hire you or talk to you, right, they know that this is an important part of who you are because you put it out there, right? There's no kind of like, I'm going to secretly do this. And I've had a similar thing with my talking about sort of traveling by train, because it's not the quickest way to go, but you sort of just put it out there and clients go, oh, you're on a train today? And I'm like, yeah. And they go, oh, that's cool, right? Now, if I hadn't talked about that, he's never available, right? Why is he not available on these days? Whereas you just turn it into a thing and you embrace it, lean into it. And it wasn't a deliberate strategy, but I just kind of went, I'm going to talk about this stuff. And people go, and it's become it's like the thing they associate with you, and that's part of who you are. And so I think there's something nice that you found that thing, but also the willingness to talk about it. So you're kind of, I guess you're developing in public, right? A little bit. Mm. And that's cool.
Yeah, sure. I never thought about it this way, but probably yes. And of course, I think that my marketing knowledge kind of helps. It's not that I necessarily think about things that I do in a marketing way.
Right, because you're not going, how would this look on social media, right? You're just doing it. And yeah, sure, you're going to spin it in a way that's, you're not going to go, I had a really crap time. Well, maybe you would, but like it's not going to be, here's something really disastrous that's not very interesting. Yeah. Right, a boring thing you won't talk about. But it's not, it's authentic, I guess, and it all fits together, right? And
I just know that you need to talk about things in order for other people to know about it. Because of course you can have the best product on the market. If you don't talk about it, how should anybody know? And that's the same with passions, with what you're doing at work, with whatever thing you want to share with the world. You need to share it.
Love it. Amazing. Anna, I want to say thank you for several things. One is we've done some fun things together in the past, and I want to say thank you for those because that was great fun.
Enjoyed them as well.
Yeah. And hopefully we can find other ways to do that in the future. The second thing is I just want to say thank you for being on LinkedIn. Right, there is a lot of terrible content there, and you are somebody that, and we'll put links to this in the show notes so people can see the kind of things that you do. They should find their own way of doing it, but I think you're kind of inspirational there. But I just love the vibe because I think there's something magical, and in a world where there's so many people stuck in jobs they hate, doing things like haven't worked this stuff out. I'm not suggesting you have solutions to everything, but there's something about the way you go about stuff that I think is really interesting and really infectious. And thank you for spending the time to share it with it because it's inspired me and hopefully it's inspired some people listening as well.
Thanks so much. Now I'm under pressure, but...
Yeah. For the next few months, right, your posts are going to be under even more scrutiny. But that's cool, right? It's people looking at your stuff. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you too.
So that's it for this episode of the show. My enormous thanks to you for listening and, of course, to Anna for appearing. To find out more about Anna and to see her LinkedIn output, have a look in the show notes. There's links to those there. If this is your first time listening to the Human Risk podcast, where have you been? But thank you so much for joining me. You can subscribe wherever you get your quality audio content. It's available on all of the major podcasting platforms. If you like the show and have yet to leave a review or rating for it, please do so on whichever network you're listening to this on. It really, really does help. I will be back very soon with another episode of the show. But in the meantime, if you are new to it or you haven't listened to all of the 300-odd episodes, then visit the show's website, humanriskpodcast.com. I'm sure you'll find something for you there. And remember, let's take some inspiration from what Anna was saying. If you want something to happen, make it happen. Nobody else is going to build the life you want for you.